600,000 requests. That's how many times Cursor tested whether you're better than a classifier at picking your own AI model. You lost by 60% on cost, with zero quality difference. And you probably don't know, the argument's already over. On July 22nd, Cursor turned that classifier loose on every paying team. For 3 years, the default move in AI coding was simple. Point every request at the biggest, most expensive model you can afford, because smarter is always safer. Nobody had the request volume to measure what that habit cost, until now. Cursor's router sits in front of every coding request from every paying team, which makes it the largest real-world test ever run on whether picking models by hand works. Cursor's own numbers on cost per accepted commit. Claude Fable 5, the model most developers handpick for hard work, costs $12.69 per commit. Claude Opus 4.8 costs $7.34. Cursor's new router, running in intelligence mode, gets the same accepted commit for $6.76. In balance mode, $4.63. That's a 63% price gap between the model people choose by instinct and the model an algorithm chooses by data for work that gets merged either way. This wasn't a vibes launch. Cursor trained the router on 600,000 real coding requests, then validated it in an online A/B test across millions of live requests, optimizing for one signal: does the code get kept? Not a leaderboard score, whether a human kept the output. And the savings didn't shrink at scale, they grew. In early access with dozens of enterprise teams, the router cut costs 30 to 50% versus defaulting to Opus 4.8. Rolled out across the full millions of requests A/B test, that number climbed to 60%, at what Cursor calls frontier quality satisfaction. Most systems get worse when you scale them past the pilot. But Cursor isn't an isolated case. The same week this shipped, the rest of the industry was proving the identical point from a completely different angle. Artificial analysis now tracks cost per finished task, not cost per token, across every frontier model. Claude Fable 5 scores 60 on their intelligence index at $3.25 a task. DeepSeek V4 Pro scores 44 for 4 cents a task. That's 81 times the price for 16 more points. If you're paying frontier rates for average tasks, you're funding an intelligence gap most work never touches. Between July 8th and July 16th, 4 new frontier models launched in 8 days. Grok 4.5, OpenAI's GPT 5.6 Trio, Meta's Muse Spark 1.1, and Kimi K3. Near-frontier intelligence got 2 to 3 times cheaper in that single week. Whatever model was the smart default on July 7th was already overpriced by July 16th. Even the benchmark providers moved. Artificial analysis rebuilt its entire intelligence index in this same window, adding cost per task, time per task, and tokens per task as headline metrics for the first time, and retiring its old instruction following test, because every frontier model had saturated it. When the people who grade AI models start grading them on price and speed instead of raw score, that's not a methodology footnote. That's an admission that raw intelligence stopped being the bottleneck. So, what is Cursor's router optimizing for if not the leaderboard? 2 signals: whether the developer kept the generated code without rewriting it, and task complexity read straight from the request itself, not which model wins an argument on a benchmark chart, whether the output survives contact with a real codebase. Put those together, and you get an uncomfortable fact for anyone still choosing models by seal. The same week a classifier proved it beats manual picking by 60% on cost, with no quality loss. The gap between the best model and good enough shrank to single-digit days. Standing still with one model isn't caution anymore. It's a tax you're choosing to pay. The industry spent 3 years arguing about which model is the smartest. It turns out the real edge was never the model. It was a boring classifier nobody bothered to name, trained on 600,000 real decisions before you made your first one today. The debate isn't open anymore. The only question left is whether you're still running it by hand.